All right, welcoming everybody to the deep dive. We've got a really fascinating one for you today. An artist you might not know but should, Bob Camblin. We're going to look at his art, but also like the ideas behind it,
Yeah.
his philosophy. And luckily, we've got some pretty cool stuff to work with here.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing the material we dug up for this deep dive.
Mhm.
Writings, like straight from Camblin, his own words, Bob Camblin quotes, and other mysteries. A bit about his life, too, which is in itself pretty interesting. Plus, we've got this painting, Reflections of Venice, and a whole YouTube video breaking it down, even some stuff from a book about it. And then to top it all off, some reviews of other books where his art pops up. So, yeah, lot to dig into.
A lot. And, I think the thing that really gets me about this guy right off the bat is, well, the mystery. I mean, he was so prolific, worked in all these different mediums, oils, acrylics, watercolors, you name it, even painted paper. And he's super respected by other artists. Collectors go nuts for his stuff. But so much of his work is hard to find. Like, it's out there, but not easy to access. I don't know, it just adds to the intrigue.
It absolutely does. You get the sense that he was this complex, almost contradictory figure, highly sought after, yet intentionally elusive. So, what we're going to try to do today is untangle some of that, get a sense of his unique perspective on art, on life, and maybe even how those two things intertwined for him.
Yeah, and hopefully along the way, uncover some interesting connections and insights that, well, maybe you wouldn't expect. So let's jump right in, shall we? Start with those quotes. I mean, that's like a direct line into his head.
Right. Raw, unfiltered Camblin. And right away, you get a sense of his perspective on time, change, that sort of thing. He's got this one quote, "Fortunately, some things remain forever, or another 10 years, perhaps." There's a humor there, a little wry observation. But it also points to this awareness of the impermanence of things, even things we think of as lasting.
Totally. And that echoes what he says about Salt Air, Summer 1967. He talks about the music itself seeming to decay, like a
Mm.
little bit, each time he heard it, marking the passage of time. That feeling that you can't hold on to a moment forever, no matter how perfect it seems at the time. I think that's something we can all relate to.
Absolutely. It's that bittersweet recognition of time's relentless flow. And then you get these really fascinating connections he makes between seemingly unrelated things, like this quote, "Look into the atom, you get what you need. Look into magic, and you get what you need. Philosophy and art are in both."
Whoa, that's deep.
Right. So what's he saying there? Is it about the search for truth, for meaning, whether through scientific observation, which is like looking into the atom, or through these more intuitive, maybe even mystical means, which is like looking into magic? He seems to be saying that the drive is the same, even if the methods differ.
And then he takes it even further with this idea of the perfectly average. He sees the universe from that perspective, which allows him to appreciate I don't know, the miracles on both sides, the science and the magic, like this intensely bright gray where those two things eventually meet. It's pretty wild.
It's like he's not choosing sides, He wants to hold both the rational explanation and the sense of wonder in his mind at the same time. That's where his belief in the sixth sense comes in, without a doubt. Senza dubio, he says. Like he trusts his intuition just as much as his logical mind.
But then there's also this tension, this yearning. He's got this quote, "Bright day and I soar, how cruel that my soul is attached to this earth and yet."
Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it? It's that desire to transcend the physical, to reach for something more, but at the same time, being tethered to this world. A very human struggle. And maybe that's why he emphasizes self-honesty so much and that connection to nature. "I cannot tell a lie to myself for very long," he says, "and then find something in nature that completes you and then surrender." Like nature is that grounding force, that reminder of something larger than ourselves.
Yeah, and from that connection to nature, he derives these core principles, almost like guiding lights. The light is all you need. The end is to evolve by doing the best you can. The means is to amplify what you're doing and believe in the balance. Patience and yet. Freedom again and yet. In silence, the reality can be maintained. It's a lot to unpack.
It is, but it's like he's laying out the groundwork for his entire worldview, the importance of focus, of continuous growth, of finding truth and stillness, and those and yets are crucial. He's not presenting these as absolutes, but as part of this ongoing process full of contradictions and complexities.
And I think that extends to his view of art as well. He talks about art evolving from art for art's sake to art for life's sake or art for my sake or art for survival's sake. Like it's becoming something essential, something tied to human experience, not just aesthetics.
Right. It's not just about creating something beautiful anymore. It's about something deeper, something that connects us to the world, to ourselves.
Right.
And that relates to his idea of stepping off the train of thought. Like, When you think, don't act. When you act, don't think. He's suggesting that there's a different kind of power, a different kind of action that comes from going beyond just the intellectual.
Yeah, like tapping into something more intuitive, more primal almost.
Mm.
And then he's got these incredibly vivid, almost poetic observations. Like this one. The cosmos waves as me with tree leaves. Sun-heated air moves across the electrons of my skin. Sunlight reflects those greens. First, white, then yellow-green, and in deep shadows, blue. It's like he's experiencing the world on this completely sensory level where everything is interconnected.
It's beautiful, isn't it? And then you have the on the tower sequence, which is unfinished, these fragmented impressions, the white mountains, the cold wind, the lightning, and then we leave before the show is over. It leaves you hanging, wondering what the full picture would have been.
Yeah, it's like a glimpse into a process that's always evolving,
Yeah.
never quite finished.
Yeah.
And I think that carries over into his thoughts on communication. He says, much better than arguing is to look at my watercolor palette. And if you argue or if you agree, you may learn, but you do not communicate.
Yeah.
He's making a distinction between just exchanging information and actually connecting with someone, understanding them on a deeper level.
Right. It's about transcending the limitations of language, of those back and forth exchanges that can sometimes create more distance than connection. And that metaphor of the open gate and broken fence where someone's looking in every direction but not quite seeing everything speaks to that, you know? The limitations of our individual perspectives, the search for a truth that might always be just out of reach.
It's like we're all looking for that complete picture, but maybe it's not something we can ever fully grasp. And he contrasts revolution with evolution. Says revolution just leads to changes, but evolution coupled with understanding leads to change, like a deeper, more fundamental shift.
Interesting distinction. And then he's got these simple but really profound observations like, you never miss the water until the wells run dry. Alongside these almost haiku-like reflections, like the one about the six starlings on the broken branches where no buds are growing, there's this incredible range in his writing, from the playful to the profound and everything in between.
And it's all infused with this deep sense of connection to nature. I love this one. Well, that's enough about me, Mother Nature. Let's talk about you. What did you think of my last picture?
It's like he's having this ongoing conversation with the natural world, constantly seeking its feedback, its approval even. And I find his ways of ending arguments with optimists and pessimists fascinating. To the pessimist, you're absolutely right. To the optimist, it's a banana.
That's so Camblin.
Yeah.
So unexpected, so humorous. And then he's got this thought about whether people diminish in our eyes, our minds, or due to relativity as they move away. Such an interesting observation about perspective and how we perceive others. And the self-awareness in the line, my attempts to stop arguing created an argument.
Yeah, that's brilliant. The inherent paradox of trying to control or eliminate something that's just part of the human experience. And his exploration of believing versus knowing, he links knowing to the mystic's experience, which is fascinating. Like it's a different kind of knowledge, something that goes beyond belief or intellectual understanding.
And his idea that history is believable when creative.
Hmm.
That challenges our whole notion of history as this fixed, objective thing. And the thought that we lose our magic by understanding everything instead of just knowing goes back to that emphasis on intuition, on direct experience over intellectualizing.
It's like the more we try to explain everything, the more we lose that sense of wonder. And you see that throughout his advice on drawing, on teaching, on searching, on revealing. There's always this paradoxical element, this twist that forces you to think deeper.
And then there's his critique of the contemporary art world. He calls it a seduction by history, critics, and a very affluent but weird culture. He advocates for this return to a more naive approach. There are no nuances remaining in the world. Identification is the aesthetic. Pass quickly onto the next slide, please.
Yeah, he was clearly disillusioned with what he saw as a certain superficiality, a focus on trends and commercial success over genuine expression. His analogy, a critic is a legless man who teaches running, is so spot on. It's like he's saying, who are these people to judge the act of creation when they haven't experienced it themselves? And he makes a really interesting point about how art predates weaponry, how even language, letters, and numbers all stem from images.
It all goes back to that fundamental human need to express ourselves, to communicate beyond words. And that connects to his concept of the mystic switch, that intuitive sense of knowing, and his emphasis on process over outcome. One must try to fail in order to succeed. Success will be another failure. Process and awareness of it cannot be failure.
It's about embracing the journey, the act of creation itself, rather than getting hung up on the end result. Failure becomes an essential part of the process, a stepping stone to growth.
In his perspective on writing, starting with pictures, and how syntax can sometimes limit our thinking, it makes you realize how much language shapes our perception of the world, sometimes in ways we don't even realize.
Definitely. And then that idea of the ZZN mind, that aimless focus, and the caution against striving too hard and missing the way, it reminds me of a lot of Eastern philosophy, the idea of letting go of control, of surrendering to the process.
And his advice to resist learning, learn to fail, learn to relax, learn to feel, learn how to really think, leading to that realization, I didn't learn anything new, but I know a lot more now. That's so profound. It's about internal shifts, not just accumulating knowledge.
Exactly. It's that deeper understanding that comes from experience, from introspection, from connecting with something beyond the purely intellectual.
And his take on the Zen saying about always being Buddha but forgetting,
Yeah.
and his fascination with mirrors and magic, it's like he's hinting at this inherent potential that we all have, this interconnectedness that we might be forgetting.
And then there's his distinction between negative magic, which is used for power, and positive magic, which is used for seeing. He connects that to different ways of perceiving the world, both in art and in life. Real seeing is this whirlpool of relationships, and art is just a partial retention of that experience.
It's like a fleeting glimpse, a moment captured from this constant flow of energy and connection. And his thoughts on the art market's demand for novelty versus an artist's dedication to technique. He suggests that anonymity can be a form of freedom, a way to escape the pressures of the market and just focus on the work itself.
Yeah, that tension between commercial success and artistic integrity is a constant theme, isn't it? And his observation that symbols become popularized and lose their meaning, like the yin and yang, is so true. It's like the more widely known something becomes, the more it risks being diluted, losing its original power.
And he's got these little lines that are so simple but so revealing. Communications, how wonderful and how sad, and how nice to finally mix fun and art. You get these little glimpses into his emotional world, his sense of humor, his appreciation for the simple things.
Definitely. And his hope that despite all the trends and influences, there will always be diverse forms of expression in art is encouraging.
Yeah, that art will continue to evolve, to surprise us, to challenge us. And then that image of the standard sign against the sunset, it's like this deeply personal symbol that only he, and maybe few others, truly understand. It speaks to the limitations of language, of trying to convey something that can't be fully explained.
It's like those ineffable experiences that we can't fully articulate, but that resonate on a deeper level. And
Mm.
those contrasting images, white crystals, white salt, white wing, white bones versus dead bird, dead lake, dead sand, dead land. Such stark imagery, highlighting the fragility of life, the inevitability of death.
And his practical advice? There are no mistakes. Trust your instincts.
Hmm.
So simple, but so powerful. And his playful take on the proverb, pride goeth before a fall. He reverses it, examines the cause and effect in a totally different way. It shows how he's always questioning, always looking for a different perspective.
He's not afraid to challenge conventional wisdom, to turn things on their head. And the analogy of the two bits of a hologram arguing instead of collaborating, it speaks to the limitations of narrow viewpoints, the need to see the bigger picture.
And his ideas about chaos and order ultimately leading to the hologram, this state of collective clarity. It's like he sees these opposing forces as necessary for true understanding, for a more complete vision of reality.
Yeah, like they're not mutually exclusive, but actually complement each other, leading to something greater than the sum of their parts. And his concept of real time and humanity's purpose, to dream of how it works. That's beautiful. It's like we're all part of this grand experiment, this cosmic dream, trying to figure out the mystery of it all.
And the contrasting metaphors of the hawk and the snake, representing different approaches to life and art. The hawk, the active observer, soaring above, taking it all in. The snake, more grounded, more patient, moving through the undergrowth. It's like he's saying there are many paths, many ways of seeing and experiencing the world.
And neither is inherently better than the other, right? They both have their strengths, their limitations. And then his idea of the way back involving silence, the melting of rocks, infinite space, eternal time. It's this mystical sense of returning to the source, to a state of pure potentiality.
Like a cycle of creation and destruction, constantly renewing itself. And then the mention of Louis Sullivan, seemingly random, but then he connects it to honor. It's like even these seemingly insignificant details are imbued with meaning.
He finds significance in the unexpected, in the overlooked. And his reflections on crutches, both literal and metaphorical, the futility of clinging to things that no longer serve us, the purpose of provocation in art, the embrace of dolce far niente, the sweetness of doing nothing.
It's about acceptance, isn't it?
Yeah.
accepting the challenges, but also the simple joys of being alive, and the image of the phoenix frozen in a salty shell, unable to undergo its transformation. It speaks to a kind of stagnation, an inability to break free and embrace change.
And that realization that even when the ultimate meaning is revealed, it might just be an empty ribcage filled with sand, suggesting that the living was the meaning all along. It's both heartbreaking and beautiful, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
the journey itself is what matters, not the destination.
It is. And his contemplation of the universe folding back on itself in billions of years. It brings this cosmic perspective to his personal reflections, this sense of the vastness of time and space. And throughout his writings, you see these echoes of other thinkers like Alan Watts, William James, Sartre, even Zen proverbs and ideas from Bergson, Teilhard de Chardin, Lamarck, Koestler, Jung. It's like he's weaving together this tapestry of philosophical thought.
Absolutely. He was clearly a very well-read and intellectually curious person, and that comes through in everything he did. So let's shift gears a bit and talk about his life, his artistic journey. He started in Oklahoma, studied at the Kansas City Art Institute, got a Fulbright to study in Italy, and then had a long teaching career at various institutions.
And then in 1976, he just walks away from academia, just decides to dedicate himself fully to his art, to this nomadic existence that takes guts.
It does. And while he traveled extensively and produced a huge amount of work, what we're focusing on today are those early drawings and writings from 1950 to 1974, the stuff that was never intended for public consumption. It gives us this really intimate, unfiltered glimpse into his development as an artist.
Yeah, like we're getting to see the inner workings of his mind, the ideas that were forming before they were shaped for public display. And his artistic philosophy is so interesting. He wasn't really concerned with traditional criticism or commercial success. It was more about connecting with the viewer on a soul level, that direct, almost visceral communication.
And his style evolved over time from those incredibly detailed early drawings, almost Bruegel-like, to these more organic, abstract forms. He was fascinated by metamorphosis, by the way things transform and change, and he was really innovative in the way he combined drawing and watercolor.
He started out in abstract expressionism, but then he pioneered this style called mouches volantes, which literally means flying flies.
It's based on those little floaters that some people see in their vision, and he used that as inspiration for a style that often featured these layered, translucent elements, like you're seeing the world through a kind of veil. It's really unique. And we should also talk about his collaborative spirit. He worked on some really cool projects with other artists, like B&E Productions with Earl Staley and Joe Tate, and the Anonymous Artists Concept, where the focus was on the creative process itself, not on individual egos.
Yeah, and they did some really interesting shows together. Tattoo Show, Joe Take's Backyard, The Camping Show. It's clear that he thrived in those collaborative environments where ideas could bounce back and forth freely. And later on, he collaborated with Nancy Giordano, which led to further development of the Mouches Volantes style. And even in his later series like Big Al and Descent from the Cross, you see his range and his continued use of symbolism. He clearly had a lasting impact on contemporary artists.
Oh, absolutely. And the quotes for people who knew him really paint a picture of this complex, multifaceted individual. Pete Gershon called him a mystical trickster. George O. Jackson Jr. said his work fostered a genuine connection. Earl Staley talked about the impact he had on his own artistic development. Penny Serling highlighted his inquisitive nature and collaborative spirit. Even collectors like Carolyn Farb felt a profound resonance with his art. It's clear he touched a lot of lives.
So let's delve into a specific painting now, Reflections of Venice. We have this great description from Zen and the Art of Enlightenment, Volume 2. It's described as this watercolor-like scene in these translucent blues, golds, pale grays. There's this wash that suggests water, and then these superimposed forms that look like Venetian glass, like goblet spheres, creating these layers of visual experience.
And the way it subtly celebrates Venice's connection to glass making, specifically Murano glass. It's like these forms are drifting across the cityscape, which is just faintly outlined in the background. And then you have this figure in a top hat and other hidden figures adding to the mystery.
The way the light plays through the glass, it really evokes that luminous quality of Murano glass. And the way the city merges with these ethereal forms, it taps into that romantic fascination with Venice. The book even points out the nods to symbolism and surrealism with those hidden figures and the overall sense of illusion.
Yeah, like you're seeing Venice through this veil of glass. And while the layering technique might remind you of Klee, it's more anchored in recognizable forms, like the glassware and the architecture. That blurring of boundaries between object, environment, and reflection is very surrealist, even magical realist.
And as the book says, it captures the fleeting beauty of a city built on water, blending still life and urban landscape in this almost dreamlike vision.
Now, the YouTube transcript, Reflections of Venice, a place of poetic longing, adds another layer to our understanding. It talks about the painting radiating this ethereal glow, like Venice is suspended between water and sky. The forms seem to both emerge and dissolve, creating this sense of something in between, not quite tangible.
And the central champagne glass, highlighted as an echo of Murano's craftsmanship. It's like the essence of the city, sculpted from light. And that phrase, Eno-like orb, describing this element that holds fragments of the scene, it's so evocative, like capturing time and space in a fragile sphere.
And the figure in the top hat, almost ghostly, and those fleeting shapes that remind you of forgotten carnivals, it reinforces that dual sense of movement and stillness in the painting.
The video even draws this parallel between Venice and a Zen koan, asking what remains when the reflection is gone. It's an invitation to contemplate impermanence, the fleeting nature of things. And it connects the painting to hexagram 58 Tui from the I Ching, the joyous lake, with its symbolism of fluidity, inspiration, communication.
And the emphasis on the empty space, connecting it to D.T. Suzuki's philosophy and the balance between form and emptiness, it's not just about the objects themselves, but the spaces between them, the interplay of light and shadow.
And the secular Buddhist perspective, seeing Venice as a metaphor for the human experience, this cycle of decay and renewal, the video makes the point that creativity is about seeing the unseen, that the painting is a sensory impression, not a literal record.
It's about capturing the essence of a place, filtered through memory, through imagination.
So, as the video says, Reflections of Venice is more than just a picture. It's an invitation to perceive beyond the surface, to contemplate the boundaries between reality and illusion. Now, what about the books themselves? The Art of Everything is described as a conversation between art and philosophy, exploring the absurd, the profound, the overlooked through Camblin's drawings.
And everyday objects take on this symbolic weight. A figure 4 trap becomes a symbol of entanglement. A tattooed arm represents family history. A frog embodies Zen wisdom. The review calls the drawings paradoxes made visible, visual blueprints for ideas that make you think rather than giving you easy answers.
And the book explores illusion, vanishing acts, misdirection, as meditations on impermanence. And the theme of traps, both literal and metaphorical, the traps we create for ourselves.
It's about the human condition, our struggles, our limitations, and the recurring theme of stillness, whether it represents being trapped or a state of peace. And the review makes a crucial point. The book doesn't give you answers, it gives you questions, riddles, like Zen koans disguised as blueprints.
It's about engaging with the work actively, finding your own meaning. Now, Zen and the Art of Enlightenment sets out to provide a lens for understanding visual expression, connecting art movements to Zen philosophy and the I Ching.
The foreword talks about how different movements, realism, impressionism, expressionism, reflect different ways of seeing the world, and how those shifts resonate with Zen's emphasis on direct experience and the I Ching's concept of change and interconnectedness. And Camblin's work in this context blends abstraction with symbolic motifs, bridging ancient wisdom and modern art.
It emphasizes how art can be a portal to heightened awareness, prompting contemplation and self-inquiry. And the act of interpretation becomes this personal dialogue, offering metaphors rather than dictating a single truth.
It's about awakening that intuitive understanding, making you re-examine your feelings, memories, assumptions. And the review we have calls Camblin's illustrations koans that disrupt linear thought, fostering everyday enlightenment.
It encourages you to slow down, to resist quick conclusions, to find meaning in ambiguity. The review says it challenges, amuses, unsettles, and inspires, bringing you closer to enlightenment in the everyday.
And then there's that quote from Earl Staley about Camblin's death, their friendship, their shared projects. It adds a personal touch, reminding us that behind all the ideas and the art, there was a real person with real relationships who touched the lives of those around him.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into Bob Camblin's world, it's clear he was an incredibly complex and fascinating artist. His writings, his life, the interpretations of his work, they all come together to offer this unique perspective on art, philosophy, and the way we see the world.
He challenges us to question our perceptions, to embrace impermanence, to look for deeper meaning in the everyday.
We encourage you to seek out his work, the books we've discussed, and explore these themes for yourselves. You might just find yourself seeing the world a little differently.
And on that note, we leave you with this thought. How might Camblin's emphasis on questioning, his blending of science and magic, his focus on personal experience, challenge your own assumptions about the world? What mystic switch, as he might say, could his work activate within you?